Hey everyone, welcome to the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast with me, Bethany Boring, the founder of Step Out and Thrive LLC. And I'm just so glad that you guys are here. Again, we are in the middle of our summer series. And just in case you don't know much about Step Out and Thrive and who I am, this is the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast. And what that means by care is community, application, resources, and encouragement. And it's not just for Christian counselors, it's really for anyone who really has a deep desire to have deeper level of connections, of relationships, of Christ-centered healing with other people, especially if it's a small group, a peer-to-peer group, or counseling or coaching, whatever that can look like. These groups can go in so many different forms. And these techniques can also be used with parents, with families, with couples. There's so many different people that are part of this community that aren't necessarily counselors, but a lot of the people that I work with in my official professional groups are coaches, are counselors, are mental health professionals. And so with that being said, we are here for everybody, and especially this podcast could be here for everybody. And if you're just now joining us, we're on week 3 of our summer series, and oh my goodness, you guys, today I'm really excited because up to today, you guys have connected with relational circuits, which was week 1. Week 2 was all about the levels of the brain, and some of you guys are like, oh my word. And so maybe you just want to sit in those weeks of just awareness, and that's totally fine. And maybe you're not ready to add something else right now. But I will tell you the tool that I'm going to introduce right now and next week will be a 2-part. And so you're going to get half this week. And honestly, I think I'm going to record this both back to back. So you'll get the same. If you're watching video, you'll get the same appearance for next week too. And there's not a whole lot that I have to explain in this. It's just why. And that's what I'm going to cover today, why this is so important, and then the first step. So there's 2 steps in this process. A lot of times people call this Emmanuel Journaling. There's been so many different names to this. But here's the reason why it's important. We've been talking about relational circuits. We've been talking about parts of the brain. When we allow ourselves to get still and we really allow ourselves to pour our hearts out before God, very rarely do we get to the point where we actually stop and listen and we allow God to speak back to us. A lot of times during our quiet time, we have our set, routine of how we do things, and which is great. But a lot of times we can get out of the whole fact of doing it out of our heart motivation, doing it from our identity, doing it from really having that love, really having that deep relationship with God. We do it because we need to get it done. And no, we're not going to have a life transformational experience every single time we do this, but it can definitely help the way that we approach, right? Sometimes we can have some of those conversations like we talked about in week 1, where we're sitting in front of somebody, we know that they're talking, and it's like we are not present. This allows us to get present. This allows us to become aware. This allows us to be our full selves before God. So a lot of times we're expected to listen, but sometimes we just have so much stuff to get out that it's clogging the way that we're listening. So if that's you, if that rings a bell with you, this is just a practice. Again, it's choose your own adventure, so you do not have to do this, but this is what we're going to talk about the next 2 weeks is a little bit of Emmanuel journaling, or some people even call it interactive appreciation journaling, but it really does involve Emmanuel, which is God with us. And that's why I really like that topic for it. And so in order to do this, again, if you're part of the community, you'll have this worksheet and the resources, but if you're not, you can join it by just checking out bethanyboring.com. It's a little splash page, and you'll click on the link and you'll go from there, and you'll be right there to join us. And it's free. We have a free always level, and then you can go up from there. But yes, this podcast stuff is a lot of it's for free. So we'd love to have you guys and be part of this conversation this week as you try this out. So you'll see that it's a 2-parter. I think I'm going to have the same document for both weeks. But the first part is really just the allowing myself time to breathe, time to reflect, time to just share what's going on. And in order to do that, we can't just launch right into it. I encourage, and sometimes we do this live on group calls, which is great, but I lead everybody through some deep breathing. And sometimes I lead us through a prayer. And I was like, okay, I want you guys to be still. And sometimes it is where people need to like really just write out what they've had, almost like a check in with God. And that's totally fine. And they can do that during this time too. But when we're sharing, when we get to this first part, it's not letting go of everything horrible or everything even great that's happening in our life. It's really focusing on one specific time that we believe that God has given us. So, number one, the step is after we've got ourselves to a cool, collected state, we've done what we need to do to empty if there's anything clogging the airways, any events of our day, just any details that we're stuck with. We go ahead and got a chance to release that. And now we ask God to bring to mind a moment within the last week, within the last 2 weeks that we got to experience the goodness of God in amazing ways. And keeping in mind that could be simple as drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, to smelling some flowers outside, to seeing clouds circle in a specific way that's different, to having a really amazing conversation with friends, to seeing God orchestrate several different events that can only be explained through God. And just realizing at that moment, wow, look what God did. It could be playing with a kid, it could be playing with an animal, it could be so many different things. And when we ask God to bring that to our mind, we don't tell ourselves that, oh, we're not going to dig deeper with that memory. No, we are. And as long as it's a joy memory, as long as it's one that's bringing up a state of just deep connection and deep emotion, we want to stay with it and explore and get curious about it. And so as we write that out, we'll go through the senses. We may even look around in our minds. What did I see in that moment? What did I hear in that moment? What did I smell in that moment? What did I taste in that moment? What was my body doing in that moment? What was I feeling in that moment? And what did that feel like in my body? Those are really deep questions. Sometimes I start when I first do this, I set a timer and I only set it for 5 minutes. And then if I still have stuff going on, that's fine. But that way I don't force myself to make something happen that doesn't need to happen in that time. And that's all you're doing. That's all this first part is. It's just practicing being still, practicing being present in that moment, and just do that and just stay like that. And so, my challenge for you this week is to find 2 or 3 times where you can sit still. We can follow the outline that I provided, and you just get curious with God. Okay, God, bring to mind a moment within the last week, within the last 2 weeks, where I got to experience you in a brand new way. Keeping in mind how simple it can be, and you're not trying to create something, but you're sitting with what is and you're getting curious about it. And so I just want to challenge you to be present with that this week. Um, sometimes people do practice this out loud, but I really do challenge people to stop and write, because one, it's a whole brain activity when you do that, because you're somewhere in your mind. You may even say it, whisper it to yourself, and then you're writing it down. So it really is a whole brain activity when you're doing it, but you're really trying to connect with the relational part of your brain and be part of that and put yourself back into that experience. So, with all that being said, I don't want to give too much detail because I want you to just practice it on your own. And again, we'll be practicing that a little bit in our community this week. So, I'd love to see you in there to practice that with us. And again, it's more of an awareness, but now you're adding a little bit more practice to it. Because a lot of times, just by doing this, we define, wait a second, these are what joy moments look like. There might be other things in our mind that may originally come to mind or now, but God might bring new things to mind that you haven't thought about, you haven't been present with. So really do dig deeper into the senses and what that feels like in your body, and just allow yourself to be with God in that moment. And yes, there's more to come. So step 2 is next week. If you want to skip ahead, that's fine. I'm just not going to tell you anything about it until next week. And again, I'm so excited that you guys are here. If anything, you can practice this exercise a way to just relax, and a way to just be, and a way to just sit, maybe in the calmness that summer brings. Grab some iced coffee and just be with God and celebrate what He's doing in your life. As always, dare to do more than just survive. Step out and thrive. If you want to have any kind of resources, go to bethanyboring.com and would love to hear you and connect with you during the week in the community. All right, guys, have a great week. Hope your summer is going well and cannot wait to hear about some of these joy stories and interactive appreciation moments in Emmanuel journaling that you do. All right, see you guys later. Bye.